So tell us a little bit about your film.
Transpecos is a film set in the world of the United States Border Patrol. It's about 3 agents who are on a remote checkpoint out in the middle of nowhere, and a car comes through that changes their entire life. So the film's set in 24 hours after that car coming through.
Okay. Is your film kind of a commentary on the issues with what Border Patrol deal with, or?
We tried not to make it that. What Greg and I tried to do in writing it and then in making it was just make a film that accurately portrays what life is like out there and how crazy complex the whole thing is. And then our hope is that by the end of it, you've gone on a wild ride through this movie, and then by the end of it, you whatever side you're on, look at the film, look at the border differently.
Now, according to the description, you've got one of the main characters is somebody, a college kid who thinks that his college degree it makes him bulletproof.
Oh no,
or did I read the notes wrong?
No.
That has happened before.
That's okay. You've got a lot to prepare for here today. We've got 3 agents, and they're all at different points in their career.
Oh, okay.
One is Hobbs. He's an old guard. He's been in the Border Patrol a long time, and he believes that a college degree can't stop a bullet. The next one is Flores, who has not been in as long as Hobbs, but has been in long enough to be comfortable in the force. He's a natural at his job. He can track anything across the desert. And then the final, the third agent is Agent Davis, who is a fresh-faced young agent, and who's still new to the job. He's been there long enough to know the ropes, but he's still very new to the job.
Right. So do you deal kind of with the same issues that a lot of stories like this deal with, where your older characters are more cynical, rigid, and you've got the more idealistic young, new recruit? Or
we definitely have elements of that. I mean, you can't get away without doing that, right? In a movie where you have characters at a certain point in their positions, but we tried to infect each of those characters with nuance. And so, yes, the older agent has been there a little longer. He has some maybe less PC views on his job, but he's also got a level of heart that maybe the younger agent doesn't have, and vice versa. The younger agent is young and he's green, but he's also he's got a feeling for certain things that maybe the older agent doesn't have.
Right. How did this story come about for you?
Greg and I both had a lot of experience with the border and a lot of interest in making a movie that centers around the border conflict, and we didn't know how to get into it. Greg had worked with an orphanage along the border that had that dealt with an orphanage that helped out kids who were actually displaced by the border conflict. And then I had worked with people in the backs of restaurants and people on sod farms who had actually come across the border and had done a documentary along the border. And so both of us wanted to weigh in, and then Greg had this really special moment. He was skipping rocks on this really placid part of the Rio Grande, and these 2 Border Patrol agents just stepped up out of nowhere and stood by him for a minute, and then they walked on. And he thought, if I hadn't been here, maybe these guys would have just come by and skipped rocks as well. And so that moment of him seeing the agents as human beings was a way into the film for both of us. And there's been a few movies out there that have dealt with Border Patrol, but we wanted to make one that just looked at the people guarding the border and the people coming across the border both as human beings. Are
you dealing with issues with this film of, is it just illegal immigration? Are you dealing with, drug smuggling?
Well, it's all of it. I mean, it's the whole border contained in this one little story, hopefully. And so this story is about 3 agents whose day goes horribly wrong through the course of finding the contents of a single car. Hopefully we touch on all of those different aspects, but at the end of the day, it's about these 3 agents just trying to do the best they can with a terrible situation.
There's always new stories about the border. Do you, and I'm sure you've done your research and, read up on it, do you feel like they maybe get it wrong sometimes, that you kind of have to experience it, and that's how you come about to write, this story?
I don't know. I don't know exactly how to answer that. This movie is not a critique on any other movies or stories, and if they did it well or poorly. We did 4 years worth of research.
Okay.
Being out in the desert, right, like meeting agents, closing down little bars and one-stop like towns with them, and hearing their actual stories of men and women who were on the ground out there, seeing pictures on their phones of what happens during their day, and so we just wanted to reflect that, take all of these feelings, take all these thoughts, and put that in a thrilling story.
What is your biggest? Let me rephrase that question. What is it that you really take away from the border agents that people that aren't experienced with it, don't see?
I think the craziest thing after 9/11, there was a huge hiring surge in the Border Patrol.
Right.
And what you see back in the 80s and 90s and before is these agents were part of their communities. They were coaching Little League baseball teams.
Right.
They were volunteering with the Boy Scouts or whatever. And then after this surge, after 9/11, the whole country changed and we became more militarized in a lot of aspects. But with the Border Patrol, they became more like an occupying force of an area and less like an integrated aspect of the society. And so what you have is you have these men and women who are, a lot of them don't have the training that they used to, but also they're going through experiences that are so surreal that you can't. Well, just to finish answering that question, they're going through experiences day in and day out
right.
that are too surreal to comprehend as a human being sometimes, and they're still at the end of the day having to go home to a family or having to.
Sounds like to me you're describing, an aspect of the military during war where we don't focus as much as training because we're just trying to push people out.
Not so much with that. I think the only reason I brought that up is because if you're a soldier in war, you're off in some arena somewhere
right.
else that, for better or for worse, it's not your home. You're not going home. You're in this distinct area of the world, and then you're coming back home, and hopefully you're getting the care you need. But those two things are distinctly different. With the Border Patrol, it's their 9-to-5 job to
right.
go into this surreal situation where they see somebody across the desert who may be someone coming over trying to work and an honest person, or maybe someone trying to kill them.
Politics aside, because you're putting a human face to this, do you think there's a lot more understanding with the Border Patrol about the real life issues, something that politicians don't typically? I know you're not trying to make a political commentary, but
so what's the question?
Do you feel like that there's a lot more understanding from them about the people that are coming across?
I don't know. I would say obviously there's a lot more understanding. I don't know. The people who work the job day in and day out, and it's their 9-to-5 job as it is, of course they probably understand it more than somebody who's flying in from Washington or wherever and assessing the situation and flying out or reading reports
right.
on it or anything like that. One thing we like any law enforcement agency, like any military unit, the majority of the agents that we met and interacted with are good people.
Right.
And they understand the complexities of their job. They understand that everyone coming across isn't a monster, isn't a terrible person.
Right.
Some people are very honest people. There are women and kids coming across the border. And there's the exception to the rule that gives them the bad name
right.
of mistreating people or whatever. But
right.
but the majority of them were really good people who were caught in a surreal and terrible situation.
What was the most surreal thing that you guys encountered in doing
the
this project?
The most surreal thing for us?
Yeah.
The whole experience of making this movie was surreal. We were out in southern New Mexico where we shot it. We were along the U.S.-Mexico border. We were just a few miles north of it on this road that the heat would sometimes get up to 120 degrees. Our shoes were melting off of the soles of our shoes were melting
really?
onto the concrete. The computer that we were loading the footage onto was crashing because it was so hot. And there were snakes out there. There were so many rattlesnake. I think we had something like, we had a somebody on our crew who was just there for. We've got 5 minutes, so I'll try and make it quick. We had somebody on a crew who was the medic and the rattlesnake wrangler. And one day, our crew was standing around. We were filming, and we saw this rattlesnake skin that was draped over a branch. Everyone was like, "Wow, that's beautiful! Look how intact that rattlesnake skin is." And after a few minutes, someone looked down, and it's just right over here. After a few minutes, someone looked down and saw the tongue darting in and out, and it had just eaten, and it was relaxing after its meal, and then it just shot away into the bushes, and you couldn't see it. It completely disappeared.
Wow.
And so we just, it just let us know that the desert, in our little like kind of cush experience of we're not having to walk across without water, it's still an incredibly dangerous place.
All right, so this is, because we're that nerd show, this is the last question we like to ask every filmmaker, okay? If you could write, direct, or star in Star Trek or Star Wars, which one would you pick, and why?
Oh man, I'm terrible at this, or I'm a terrible person to answer this question. Maybe, or I'm going to make a lot of people angry.
Your nerd credibility is going.
My nerd credibility is way down. Yeah, in terms of these two shows or these two movies or franchises, I'm already killing it, right? I'm a Star Wars. I lean towards the Star Wars end of the spectrum, and I would probably want to star in it. I don't know if it would be more fun to be a Jedi or a Sith, but what's your answer to that?
Well, Star Wars, obviously, because, and I think this is the answer you're leaning towards, because you get to wield a lightsaber. As soon as we saw those, we're like, we must have those.
But you don't get to teleport.
That's true. You don't get to teleport.
If I could teleport.
But then again, wielding a lightsaber.
It's pretty awesome.
Exactly.
But maybe there's an aspect of the show maybe there's an aspect of the Star Trek universe of all the teleportations that go wrong.
Right.
That we never see, and you don't want to teleport actually.
That is true. Well, thank you very much.
Hey, thanks.
And good luck with the film.
Thank you.